And hello, everybody. Welcome into the Nittany Lion Sports Report. Bob Long and Tyler Gehlhaus. What a long delay to get here. But Big Ten football is back. Penn State football is back, and that means that we are back here tonight. It's an emergency podcast here, Tyler. Certainly had to come on as quickly as the news came out here today that the Big Ten returns to play on October the 24th. An 8-game, 8-week regular season schedule, and then a final 9th week that will include the Big Ten championship game on December the 19th, and then they'll kind of pair up a +1 with all those other teams and the 2 versus 2 in each division, etc. Should be a lot of fun. Very excited to see what happens here, and excited to be here with you tonight.
Yeah, it's good to be back. A sense of normalcy around here, especially with watching the ACC play last weekend. Got the sense that the Big Ten might be coming back soon. Finally, a decision was made today. We still have to wait a couple weeks, actually more than a month, till we kick off. But certainly good news today that was delivered, and the countdown is officially on to the start of the 2020 football season for the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, certainly. And, obviously, elephant in the room is that this all has to do with the global pandemic, coronavirus, and what has gone on here in the United States. Of course, going to do our best to kind of, we'll say, shy away from that, right? And we want to make sure that everybody can get out there and play safely. I don't know whether that is something that can happen, will happen, but what I'm really excited for, Tyler, is these kids getting out there and having an opportunity to play. And it seems like some of the rapid testing, daily testing, and some of the resources being allocated in kind of round 2 here for the Big Ten, I'll say are impressive, and I think maybe give a little bit more comfort than the August 11th initial vote.
Yeah, I think it's a couple things, Bob. I think that the Big Ten, when they made that decision back in August to cancel, I think they maybe jumped the gun a little bit. The Pac-12 followed right away. I think they were expecting other conferences to follow suit. The Pac-12 was the only one that followed suit. And the Big Ten got a lot of backlash for that. The last month or so, however long that's been, they've gotten backlash almost every day. They said that the commissioner, there was a lack of communication with the coaches. Players are opting out because they don't know what's going on. But at the end of the day, fingers crossed, it's going to work out, and we will have a football season, not what anybody had expected. October 24th, 2020 for back in March for everybody was going to be the whiteout game against Ohio State, likely deciding the Big Ten East champion, and very well deciding a possible Big Ten champion and a college football playoff berth. Now it'll be the start of the season. Schedule still hasn't come out yet. It remains to be seen who Penn State will play on that day, but definitely a step in the right direction and exciting nonetheless.
For sure, absolutely. We might have to have another emergency pod
right
when that schedule does come out. 3 quick hits for you. First of all, we mentioned the 8 games in 8 weeks, so no built-in bye week. The other thing that has to be noted from a COVID perspective is there's a 21-day suspension of play for any players that test positive. So that is longer than what we've seen in, I guess, the normal course of life, where it's been 14-day quarantine, generally speaking, for those that do catch the virus. And third is a shutdown threshold for a particular team once there's a 5% positivity rate on any given team. So I'm hopeful that none of those factors come into play, but it has to be noted before we get any deeper.
Sure. And one thing's certain that Penn State, especially with James Franklin, they've done a great job, the program, even through the cancellation time to now, with keeping their guys, healthy and all that. And I don't think there's been any reported cases of football players from Penn State. Now, Penn State has student athletes that have tested positive, but so far there have been none, at least reported, that were football. So that's good. I think that James Franklin nobody really prepares for something like this, but I think he's a good one to have in charge of your program for a time like this.
One more piece of housekeeping before we really get to the nitty-gritty, and that is that we've been picked up. We have a new home this year for the Nittany Lion Sports Report. It'll still be under the Bob Long Sports moniker. Still going to be Tyler. Still going to be me. However, We're going to have a great partnership with a wonderful app coming out of Central Pennsylvania. A lot of Penn State football fans. Great opportunity for us, and hopefully a great opportunity for them to build their way into the Philadelphia market. That is the Small Player Big Play app run by Bruce Badgley, a good friend of mine. He's seen what we've done and kind of taken close tabs on it and thought it would be a great addition. They have an Indiana basketball show, as it turns out. He's an Indiana guy himself. A lot of high school and some other college stuff. Pittsburgh has a podcast there, so we're going to have to compete against those guys, and we're excited to join them. So you see the logo on the center of your screen, Small Player Big Play. Make sure that this is an emergency pod, so we get to put this one up the normal channels, but please download. It's going to be free to view. And make sure that you get out there and follow our streams all year long. We're excited to be teaming up with Small Player Big Play. All right, Tyler, time for football. The first thing that jumps out to me is the all-world and should have been all-American tight end coming back, Pat Freiermuth, running it back with the Nittany Lions here in the 2020 season.
Yeah, so actually at the end of last year, Pat Freiermuth, not many people know this, but he had the chance to leave after his true sophomore season. Reason for that being after 3 years of post-graduating high school. So 3 years from being removed from high school, you're actually officially eligible for the NFL draft. He took a post-grad year. So that year, it didn't count against his eligibility at Penn State or in the NCAA, but it did count towards his clock for the NFL.
Sure.
So not many people realize that. He made a statement at the end of last year. We became aware of it towards the end of the year, and he ended up coming back for his junior year, which is this year, which will undoubtedly be his last year with the Nittany Lions. There were rumors that he was going to opt out not long ago. He actually never made any comments himself. Today on the Big Ten Network, James Franklin, I don't know if you saw it, but James Franklin was on a Zoom call, press conference with Dave Revson, the Big Ten Network, and he actually had Freiermuth with him, and Freiermuth had mentioned that he's coming back for his junior season. He never opted out, he said, despite the rumors, and he's full go, looking forward to what is pretty likely his last season in Happy Valley, and he's going to have some records. I think he only needs one touchdown to break the tight end receiving touchdown record. And, he's a leader for the team. He's captain. So it's a big opt-in, if you would say, for Penn State getting Freiermuth to recommit for the season.
Sure. And, whatever he may say about communication and where that came down, whether or not he had formally opted out or not, the point being was, and you're seeing this across the Big Ten, is that these guys were opting out because the Big Ten was talking about a spring of 2021 season in which it was going to be bumping up against the NFL draft. Likely was not going to have anything related to a college football playoff with 3 of the Power 5 conferences still playing. And so with this about face from the Big Ten, certainly no reason for these guys not to consider coming back, playing for these programs. And we'll talk about this as well. Chasing a national title. It's one of those years where, the Big Ten is only going to get 9 games in. These other conferences are going to get 11. But the question is, can the Big Ten get a team into the college football playoff?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Big Ten's definitely going to get a team in. I think it's really only down to 2 teams. I think it's, Ohio State and Penn State. Ohio State probably has a leg up right now.
Sure.
Under normal circumstances, I actually think that 2020, I thought Penn State was going to break through. Not having that home field advantage, not having Micah Parsons on the team, as we talk about opt-outs, that hurts. Ohio State had a couple guys that opted out. They might be opting back in. There's some weird things going on, whether or not you hire an agent, that kind of thing. So I think the Big Ten's going to be in a good spot because if you ask me, it's Alabama in the SEC and then Clemson in the ACC. And Clemson's probably not going to be tested much outside of Notre Dame now that they're playing in the ACC this year. But, I mean, so there's 2 of the 4 teams right there. We don't know what the Pac-12's doing. They haven't been in the playoffs anyway the last couple of years. And then you have Texas and Oklahoma, it feels like, in the Big 12. I think the door's wide open for the Big Ten.
Sure.
I think one team will definitely get in. I don't know about 2. I don't know how that's going to – the 2 might be tough this year with only 9 games, and your resume probably wouldn't be as strong. This
is complete conjecture. Not even conjecture. This is just my opinion. This is the perfect year to say every Power 5 conference, minus the Pac-12, which is not playing, gets a team in the playoff, right? Unless there's an undefeated, let's just say an undefeated group of 5
Cincinnati
team,
is a team that keeps popping up.
and then the committee just does a 4-5 play-in, picks the
Right.
worst team, or so they deem,
Well,
of the Power 5 4, and then play a one-game playoff.
And maybe it starts. I like that idea, and maybe it starts a new process because I think that the conference champion should be awarded a spot in the college football playoff. It's like winning your conference tournament in basketball. You get that automatic bid to the tournament. Something should be said outside of just winning your conference, because that's really one of your top goals as a program. We should be rewarded with getting into the playoffs. So maybe it changes things down the road. Maybe they do the 5 and then the 5 Power 5, and then they take one group of 5 team
Right.
and then do 1 and 2 get by, something like that. 6 teams would be kind of funny how you'd play that out, but I definitely like the idea of the conference champion getting an automatic bid to the playoff.
And if there's any year to do it, this feels like the year to do it.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
tough to talk about the college football playoff without a schedule. So what can we talk about? Well, a lot of changes with this Nittany Lion team this year. One thing that isn't going to change is the guy under center, or should we say in the shotgun, Sean Clifford. Another year under his belt. Not going to have the receiving core led by K.J. Hamler this year, and certainly a receiving core behind K.J. Hamler that left something to be desired last year. Your thoughts on Sean Clifford, his development, and what you see out of him this year?
I think you're going to see a lot of improvement with Clifford. He looked pretty good at times. He looked pretty bad at times last year. I'm basing all of this off of what Kirk Shiraka, the new offensive coordinator, did with Tanner Morgan at Minnesota. If you don't remember what Tanner Morgan did against Penn State back in early November when they beat Penn State, I think he only had like 1 or 2 incompletions the whole day. His quarterback rating was like through the roof. It just looked easy for him the whole day. He had great receivers and all, but Kirk Shiraka has a way of simplifying an offense. His quarterback track record is great, and I think that Clifford has a lot of tools. I think he has a good head on his shoulders, and I'm interested to see what he can do in this offense this year because, let's face it. I mean, they might not have the receiving core. They definitely don't have the receiving core that Minnesota had. But Penn State's running back core is probably tops in the country, or top 3 at least. The tight end room is probably the top in the country with Pat coming back and the guys behind him. And the offensive line now under Phil Troutwine, I mean, it's going to be a tough running game to start, which is just going to open up things and make it easier for Clifford.
Agreed, and I think you have some versatility in the backfield as well. Noah Cain, I think, still needs to do some work, but Devin Ford has an opportunity to really become featured as a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield. Jordy Brown has gotten better in that regard. Obviously, Ricky Slade came in seeming to be one of those options, never really found a footing here. He's going down to play for Ricky Ronnie at Old Dominion. But I think when you talk about this Kurt Shiraka offense, what he does so well, and I love the word simplify, he simplifies the offense, and he gets guys moving in tandem and in rhythm. And so it's about clearing out linebackers. It's about running screens while running a post on the outside. It's about running a screen on the right and having the running back sneak to the outside and putting him one-on-one with a linebacker. It's about getting the ball out of the hands of Sean Clifford quickly, which, again, we talked a lot last year and gained some traction in some Penn State circles with some of the blitz concepts that we've done on the whiteboard, and that will return this year as well, about Clifford not getting through multiple progressions. And Shiraka is going to want that ball out quickly,
Right.
and I think that's going to allow Clifford to be successful within this system. Taking a permutation, if you will, of the old Joe Moorhead system and what was run under Ronnie with, some wrinkles there. Shiraka is going to take those concepts, bring a little bit of a different mix to it. I think his challenge, I don't know if it's a challenge, he used the personnel he had at Minnesota, but really did not involve the tight ends. And I see that as a personnel issue at Minnesota, and a smart enough guy in Shiraka that's going to realize that not only does he have Pat Freiermuth, but a lot of talented guys underneath him.
He's going to have to utilize the tight end position at Penn State because the wide receiver room,
Yep.
there is a lot of unknown talent there. There is talent there. A lot of younger guys, and it's just out of Jahan Dotson, it's a lot of unproven. But you know what you're getting at tight end. You know you're getting out of the backfield. I think he has to utilize the tight end. So I'm not even worried about that. I know he really didn't utilize it much at Minnesota, but he also had really good receivers. Tyler Johnson, who went to the NFL, Rashad Bateman, who was an opt-out as well for this year. So it was just a different personnel, like you said, with what he was using there. But it's going to be interesting to see how he implements a tight end. I mean, I would imagine that it's going to still be a focal point of the offense because it kind of has to be.
Well, sure. I mean, right, we're talking about not just Pat Freiermuth, as I mentioned, but guys that don't have that same track record yet, but have all the tools in the world. Zach Kuntz and Brenton Strange and Tyler. This is a tight ends room that is not just going to be the 2020 show. It is tight end central when you talk about recruiting in this program. And Ciarrocca is going to, have to be involved in those discussions, along with some of the more hit-the-pavement recruiters that Penn State has about, hey, this is how we involve tight ends, and Penn State's going to remain a big-time tight end football school.
Yeah, they really have to. I mean, if you think about it, they're going from Gesicki to Freiermuth, and he's going to pass the torch down after this season. And like you said, the room is loaded already. They already have 3 commits for the next 2 classes after 2021, 22 class of 2022 they have 2, and class of 2023 they already have 1. And I mean, these guys still have 2 or 3 years left of high school ball, and they're already committed to play tight end at Penn State. So people want in that tight end room.
Yep, bingo. So that's kind of the thought on Clifford. I feel like Clifford is obviously the key for Penn State. Are they going to beat Ohio State? Well, I think it's got to be how well is Clifford going to play? How well is that offensive line going to protect?
Right. In my opinion, it is going to come down to Clifford. I mean, it's easy to say quarterback play, but I have full confidence, and it's very nice having full confidence in offensive coordinator because it's kind of like you got used to it with Moorhead. He had trouble keeping leads at times, if you recall. They were great with coming back, however, but it's really nice to have a sense of confidence in your offensive coordinator. The last couple of years with Ronnie, I just didn't have it. I didn't like the play calls. A lot of things didn't make sense. But it just feels like a breath of fresh air, if you will, and it's going to be really exciting, especially paired up with Troutwine to coach the offensive line.
Yep.
We talk about Clifford, but the run game's going to be his best friend. I mean, he's got to make plays, but he doesn't have to do anything crazy. He really doesn't. With the running game that he's going to have.
Yeah, one note on Ronnie before we move on. I know we talked about this at the end of the season, but that feels like a good. Happy for Ronnie. Opportunity to lead a program at a group of 5, a little bit of less from a scrutinization standpoint. Great for him, right? You want your guys to move up. That's a good look for Franklin. Your assistants get hired elsewhere. I think it's a good thing for James Franklin as well in this Penn State football program. You said fresh air. I'll call it a tweak to the existing system in the positive direction.
Sure.
And a guy who has a track record that, quite frankly, has eclipsed that of Ricky Ronnie, a younger coach promoted from within, given a great opportunity. He didn't do poorly. Penn State was a great football program. I just think that he was a bit of a weaker point in an otherwise very strong offense.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Something interesting about Ciarrocca, too, is he is from York, Pennsylvania.
There you go.
He's not a young coach by any stretch. He's in his 50s. The head coach route has probably passed for him. I'm not even sure if that's in his career goals or aspirations, but
well, if it was, this would have been the year.
Right, and I think that this is somebody that, could be here, for like the next, 5 to 10 years, maybe more. You never know what's going to happen down the road, but we're looking at stability right now on the offensive side with Ciarrocca at OC, which is good because would we have Moorhead for 2 or was it 3? I can't remember. He wasn't here long. Obviously, he went to Mississippi State. Now he's at Oregon as their offensive coordinator. And then Ronnie, I think, was 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. So,
yep.
It's good to have that continuity as your play caller. So, it looks like Penn State has that.
Yep. The gaping hole on the defensive side, of course, is Micah Parsons. Opting out, that came prior to COVID. Do not expect him, of course. Obviously, he's already signed with an agent. He will not be returning to Penn State. However, if there's a spot to lose a guy, now he's a generational talent, and we missed out on at least one more, and of course probably only one more, really good year out of him. However, very excited to see some of the guys behind him come up and have the opportunity to lead this defense. I feel like Ellis Brooks is a great candidate to take right over at middle linebacker, but there are plenty of other great options surrounding him. You're going to see Brandon Smith, Lance Dixon.
Sure. I think the thing that hurts him most is we talked at the beginning about what 2020, what the expectations are, and while they're still pretty much there, it's just not what anybody expected, obviously. With Micah Parsons, what you saw in the Cotton Bowl was what everybody was expecting to see almost every game this coming season. He's going to be a top 10 pick, likely, maybe top 5. Depends, NFL teams, I don't know that they really don't value the linebacker spot anymore, but he's a generational type of talent. Like you said, Penn State there's no lack of depth at the linebacker position right now. They still have good leadership there. You mentioned Ellis Brooks. So now they're going to replace all 3 linebackers from last year, Cam Brown, Jan Johnson, and Micah Parsons.
Yep.
Not really too worried about it.
They already had 6 guys playing.
Here's the thing. Yes, not having Parsons stinks. I mean, there's no way around it. He's that good. But I'm not worried about the guys filling in. Brooks will go to the middle tons of time.
Yep.
Looks like Lucetta is going to move over and take over Parsons' position. Now, he's going to be pushed hard. There's other guys in the program. You mentioned Lance Dixon, young guy. He'll be a redshirt freshman this year. Curtis Jacobs, true freshman. And then you go to the other side. You have Brandon Smith, who might be the next big thing at linebacker.
I would think that's your starter.
Yeah, he doesn't look like
Absolutely.
a linebacker. He looks more like a DN, maybe even a tight end. 6'5", probably 245 pounds, lanky, tall.
And when he was
fast.
recruited, the number 1
linebacker in the country.
recruit in the country.
So he'll be a sophomore. They have tons of talent in the room. A lot of young talent. That's another theme there. So it'll be interesting to see. I expect those guys to step up, though. I mean, Micah. One guy's not going to replace Micah Parsons. So we'll see. But you're going to miss that dominating. I mean, he was going to be the most dominating player on the defensive side of the ball, which it's tough to swallow.
That Memphis game will live forever. However, my goodness, that was just the tip of the iceberg and just a quick hit on what we expected from Micah Parsons this year. However, it seems to me like Pennsylvania guy really loved his time here at Penn State. I think that's a guy that will stay connected with the program. Doesn't help us on Saturday afternoons at 3:30, but I think he's a guy that will remain well connected with the program and with James Franklin and with that staff, especially with everything he went through to get to Penn State in that recruitment process. But I'm very excited about the linebacking core. And again, you said replacing all 3. And while that's true, it doesn't feel like it because basically every one of those guys had legitimate time over the course of last year.
And with the exception of Parsons, I mean, the other 2, you could argue that they're upgrades more than likely.
Yeah.
So
I agree. Another big Twitter update that we saw today, which makes everybody happy, was Jason Owe saying that he's ready to run it back.
Yeah, so that's kind of a funny one to me. Jason Owe will be a redshirt sophomore coming up. So again, 3 years removed from high school. Some people watching.
I know where you're going.
Some people
he was gone.
Yeah, so I mean, some people watching this show might not even know the name because he hasn't really done much for Penn State. I mean, he redshirted his first year. Last year, he had a couple sacks. He was a backup defensive end. He runs like a 4.3 40, 6'5", 250 pounds. Has everything you're looking for in an NFL player. He mentioned coming back today, which is huge, obviously. Probably same boat as Freiermuth, 1 more year type of thing, and then off for a first round, NFL paycheck coming up shortly. But no, I mean that's huge, and I'm glad we get to see him play at least 9 games, hopefully, because it's like we hardly know him, and that's the thing is like it's almost like college basketball with the Kentuckys and now Duke is kind of getting a lot of one and dones. But you get these guys, and then all of a sudden you blink and they're gone. So glad that they get to utilize a full year as Owe being a starter on the defensive line.
Sure. And again, just what a testament to this program that we're talking about a guy who very well could be a first-round draft pick this year on the defensive line, that we're saying in his redshirt freshman year he really didn't get much time and we don't know much about him. I mean, the talent that this program has on defense last year and going forward.
Playing behind Gross Matos, if
absolutely.
I may add.
Well,
so
yeah,
there you go.
First rounder, right?
Well,
so,
early second.
we went early second, yeah. We just talked about him being a future first rounder all of last year that I kind of forgot where he actually went. But it's exactly the point is there are guys coming behind Jason Owe as well. And here's his time to shine. Just happy that he has the opportunity to do so in the blue and white.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, defensive end is a really it's a talented group right now. It's a little bit thin in terms of numbers, but it's what you see with these top programs. I mean, you have guys for 3 years and then they're off to the NFL, and what do? They reload. Reload. And Penn State, it feels like they're starting to come to that reloading point where, all right, we lose Micah Parsons, under these circumstances. It's all right. We have 5 former 5-stars waiting in the wings with Jacobs, Smith, Lance Dixon, all sophomores or younger. So, it's why you recruit.
That's exactly right. Any other thoughts, defensively here as to what we're going to see from this program?
Defensively, I'm interested to see the pass defense in the secondary. A couple times last year, the safeties were out of position, late getting to the ball. You have 2 safeties coming back. As starters are going to be seniors with Lamont Wade, Jaquan Brisker. I expect big things out of both of them in their senior year. They're looking to get in, get drafted in the NFL coming up.
Well, Brisker's not a returning starter.
He's not, but he played starter minutes.
Yeah.
He did. He's not a returning starter.
He will be this year.
Garrett Taylor started, but I think Brisker's a better player.
Sure.
But
and he was
a junior college, right. So
last year.
I'm expecting big things out of in the cornerbacks. I really like the cornerback room as well. They lose John Reed, who made the Texans, got drafted by Texans, played a lot last week on Monday night. Good for him. St. Joe's Prep kid, as you know.
Prep, yeah.
But, you still have Tyreek Castro-Fields back there looking to make, an NFL team next year and get drafted.
Big bounce back year for Tyreek
Yes, he played hurt a lot last year. So be interested to see. He had a great sophomore season. His junior year, not so much. Claims he played hurt, and it was pretty obvious that he was banged up last year.
Yep. And let's be real here. You talked about some of Taylor's deficiencies as a
right.
safety. There were times where he looked really bad, Tyreek Castro-Fields, that is, but it was a zone look where Taylor was late from the safety position.
Yeah, right.
And so
I'm thinking about that. Well, I don't know what you're thinking about, but I'm thinking about that Minnesota, the one touchdown when Lamont Wade blitzed off the edge, off the corner, and he was late getting over and down the sideline to go.
Bingo. That was the beginning of the end that day.
Yeah, it was. But even alongside, so there's a lot of experience back there. And then on the other side of Castro-Fields, you have Marquise Wilson and Keaton Ellis, 2 sophomores who looked very good last year.
You want to talk about getting some starter minutes down the stretch. Keaton Ellis played a lot.
And Marquise Wilson had a couple nice interceptions last year. I mean, these are two taller cornerbacks. Ellis is north of 6 foot. I think Wilson's probably right around 5'11". So they're lanky guys for the position. Penn State likes lanky cornerbacks. So I'm expecting big things out of the defensive backfield. They have a lot to prove this year.
They do.
And let's be honest, if you're gonna make a run at it, you're gonna have to stop Justin Fields in Ohio State. At least slow him down. And that's pass rush and defensive backs.
So let's talk a little bit about Brent Pry and some defensive schemes. Again, we're going to have the blitz coming back this year, the whiteboard going up on the wall. One thing I don't think we mentioned is we're in a new studio. We moved from Bluebell to North Wales, got a little more space. Feeling good about it here, but we're getting that whiteboard up on the wall, and we'll be getting to you in anticipation of these games with some breakdowns. But let's talk verbally about what we expect out of Brent Pry. To me, a guy that last year – it was, maybe a 2 or 3 game stretch where things just didn't quite go their way. And for the first time since he's really been here, I saw Brent Pry getting a little bit of flack. I got to tell you, For my money, Brent Pry is one of the better defensive coordinators in the country. I think Penn State's very lucky to have him, and I think the personnel coming back is going to allow him to be very successful. I think some of the things in the secondary that we talked about didn't necessarily always sit well, but I think some experience in the secondary coming back, as well as that talent that you talk about, is going to allow Pry to have some flexibility, still be aggressive on the blitz, still have confidence in that linebacking core. And again, I think a bounce back year for the secondary.
Yeah, the one thing about Brent Pry that, is obviously biting him is that, Parsons isn't there. I mean, he was going to be his big toy to use this year, blitzing, dropping in coverage, delayed blitz, all that good stuff. He's going to have to change up how he was going to game plan this year, and utilizing Micah. But I mean, on paper, this defense is still very, very good. Maybe, one of his better, if not best, defenses he's had at Penn State. I mean, you have guys with experience, and then you have that blended with really talented younger guys that, are going to likely be NFL guys one day. So it'll be interesting to see what he has up his sleeve. Yes, he did catch a lot of flack last year. I thought a lot of it was, honestly deserved. But I think that he still is one of the better defensive coordinators, and I think he'll turn it around this year. I mean, heck, they've had more time to game plan now, so hopefully that's what they've been doing, even though they really didn't know there was going to be a season. But these guys never stop watching film and all that stuff. That's all they do. So, I'm expecting big things out of defense this year. I mean, the offense is going to put up points, but you're always going to get in those games like last year against Pitt when it was 17-10. The final score, and the defense bailed him out, and, Pitt bailed him out a couple times with missed kicks and stuff like that. But should be a really good defense, I think.
We're about 30 minutes in. Anything top of mind that you want to talk about? I have one quick hit thing, but I want to hear what you got.
For everybody out there, eligibility this year, you will not lose a year of eligibility even if you play. For example, Sean Clifford, redshirt junior this year. When he starts 2021 season, he will still have junior eligibility. So you do not lose a year by playing this year, which is obviously unheard of and under the circumstances that we're in. So you don't lose a year of eligibility, so something to follow for, which is really interesting.
And you know what? There's a tumble effect, a waterfall effect.
Absolutely.
Do you expand the rosters, or programs cutting more
well,
guys?
That's the thing, because
do kids that are verbally committed right now make a different decision because now they're behind essentially two classes of talented players?
Does Sean Clifford stay for those? Does Sean Clifford have 3 more seasons as the starting quarterback at Penn State? Does he have? I don't want to say this, but if he
3 more, including this
including
year.
2020,
Sure.
right? So he could have at least 3. Technically, he could kill it this year, go to the NFL, which I don't see happening. I'm not saying he's not going to kill it, but I don't see him leaving.
Sure.
His brother's coming in
as
a receiver prospect next year. They want to play together, for a year type of thing. But it's interesting, and especially at the quarterback position, because there's only one of them. And with recruiting, you're usually only taking 1 per class. So it's
although that's not been the case for Penn State.
It hasn't always been, but
Michael Johnson Jr.
But it usually
and Taquan
one
Roberts.
of the other usually fizzle out because of there's only 1 quarterback.
And what do you see there?
So
with that class,
I just see it being a little confusing for recruits, specifically quarterback, because it's like, what are the guys ahead of me going to do? Are they going to use? Am I going to now, kind of lose a year type of thing if Clifford hypothetically has 3 more years, where I thought he was only going to play 2 more, and then what's the guy above me in pecking order? It's a trickle down effect. So
Clifford's such a great example, and generally speaking, the quarterback position is a great example. There are, of course, a few quarterbacks that play well enough and actually can go to the NFL early. However, then there are guys like Sean Clifford who probably will not be able to do that, may or may not be an NFL quarterback down the road. But it's just so tough when you build your offense around him. Unless somebody comes in and is just a stud, it's going to be so tough to replace him. So to your point, I mean, this isn't a running back position where you can split carries. This isn't a linebacker where maybe it is a Micah Parsons and can go on to the NFL. It isn't a defensive lineman that can have a decent year but have incredible hands and measurables and go. It is, of course, something that can happen with the right type of quarterback. But, I think you're absolutely right. There's that bell curve, and the vast majority of players are going to fall here where they're not going to leave early. Maybe they want to stay, maybe they don't. Maybe that last or extra year makes them think, hey, I'm going to be more desirable for an NFL team. They stay the extra year. And how much more difficult is it to displace that player? Here's a great example, right? We talked about Steven Gonzalez coming back for his senior year.
Yep.
A guy that I don't know that he would have been drafted very highly anyway, but a guy that really didn't have a great senior year. But a guy that's tough to displace because he's been on that line. There's continuity there. He understands the tackle that's standing right next to him. And I wonder if that's going to be the case for these types of situations with an expanded roster.
Yeah, it's going to be, they have the 85 scholarship counts. I don't know what they're going to do with that, but it's going to be something to watch, especially because this year it's like you're not going to redshirt anybody because they're not losing their eligibility, but you could technically, play somebody a little bit this year and then a developmental offensive lineman type of guy. Well, he probably wouldn't be playing this year, but let me backtrack. He would almost get 2 redshirt years, but really only redshirting, taking 1 year, if you know what I mean, which
Right.
would be
Yep.
because nobody's losing eligibility this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, it can benefit a lot of guys, too.
It can. No, it's a good point. It's a good thing to bring up. The other thing I was just going to throw out there is let's talk about who Penn State's going to play. And we're not going to know the order, but we can generally take a run down the Big East. And the crossover this year was supposed to be Minnesota at home, I believe.
No.
Is that not right?
No. No Minnesota. It was going to be Iowa.
Well, that's one.
The other one was
9
going to be
game schedule.
Northwestern. And then on the road at Nebraska.
Okay.
So they were the 3 because there's 7. So that's you
right.
play 6 in the East
Right.
and then 3. So 4. That's 9 total. So where it stands right now with the schedule, they're still going to, I would imagine, play at Nebraska because they have 4 away games. So it'll be 4 and 4
Right.
for the 8 weeks. Now, what's going to happen, at least to my understanding, is it'll be home against Iowa or home against Northwestern.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that's going to work out, but it's you'll probably drop one and play the other. For entertainment purposes, I'd like to play Iowa. It's but they're a better team than Northwestern. But Penn State's also played Iowa. It seems like the last 5 years, every year for a crossover. And I think they go to Kinnick again next year. So I like seeing them play other teams, but I believe it's going to be one of those 2 teams, Northwestern and Iowa, that will be dropped. Like you said, we're still not sure about the order yet. But that's pretty. I think we'll know in about 24 to 48 hours.
I think so, but we can talk generally about the East, and obviously Ohio State is the team to beat. They have lost obviously a lot at the running back position, but they returned Justin Fields. They still have a tremendous offensive and defensive line and just incredible talent. That, of course, the team to beat and will be the top-ranked team in the Big East, or the Big Ten, coming in. Michigan, interesting situation there.
Well, earlier we were talking about, players opting back, not necessarily opting back in, but saying
Situation has changed.
I'm playing. Well, Michigan has kind of been the opposite. The Big Ten announced that they're playing, and then they have guys say, well, we're opting out. So
Right.
Michigan, depending on who you ask, it looked like they're going to have a little bit of a rebuilding year. I know they probably don't like using that word rebuild, like Penn State wouldn't like saying rebuild either. But today, their best receiver, Nico Collins, announced that he's opting out. Quarterback, it was actually a quarterback battle between Dylan McCaffrey, younger brother of Christian McCaffrey of the Panthers, was battling Joe Milton for the starting job. Looks like Joe Milton has won since McCaffrey not only opted out but is transferring out of Michigan.
Yeah.
Michigan has to replace their whole offensive line.
And that is the McCaffrey thing is a surprise, just if nothing else because of the attention that he got coming in.
And let's not forget either that Christian McCaffrey, the older brother, played for Harbaugh at Stanford as well.
Yeah.
At least for a little bit. I'm not sure how long.
Actually, I don't know about that.
I could be wrong.
I was thinking that
he
was
definitely
fully
played for David Shaw.
David Shaw.
I thought there was a prior relationship there.
It's possible.
We'll have to look after the show. But yeah, I mean, Michigan, you talk about Ohio State, definitely the team to beat. I would put Penn State number 2.
I would too, but I get it. Some talent leaving. Michigan is still an extremely talented program, and I think they are right there.
They're really beat up on the lines this year. The offense and defensive lines have taken a beating there.
And that offensive line has been the strength of that program for the last few years. There's no doubt. They've sent a lot of guys to the NFL.
Right.
They've had a lot of all Big Ten selections. So I get what you're saying. It's still Michigan.
Well, it is. And, Penn State, it's been House of Horrors going to Ann Arbor, the big house, the last couple of years. This year, no fans. I don't know if that changes anything.
The noise all goes up anyway, so
right.
you don't hear anything.
I don't know. But Michigan, it just, they're replacing their whole offensive line, new quarterback, 2 out of their 3 receivers now. Even on their defensive line is very thin. They are still Michigan. As you said, it's not going to be like a cakewalk like Penn State's going to go in there when they go in there and just walk over them. I mean, it's going to be a stressful game, just like it seems like it always is when those two teams play. So I think that Michigan is trending down, though, a little bit as of late. You could put the other Michigan team in there. Michigan State is trending down big time, too. I actually like Indiana this year when we talk about the Big Ten East. I think
good offensive program.
I think Indiana is going to surprise some teams. I wouldn't be surprised, and I'm not going out on a limb or anything like that, but I wouldn't be surprised if they really contend for that 3rd spot this year.
Yeah,
with Michigan. And I think Michigan State's going to drop down to 5 at the end of the day, and they might even have trouble holding off like a Maryland for that 5 spot. And then those two can battle out for 5 and 6. Rutgers coming in at 7. And what's interesting this year is we talked about it a little bit earlier on is December 19th is going to be the Big Ten Championship.
Yep.
December 19th is also going to be the 2 from the East plays the 2 from the West, the 3 East, 3 West, and so on. We're going to have a toilet bowl this year.
I can't wait.
And it's probably going to be – it's almost like it's going to be really fun to watch because it's going to be like Illinois versus Rutgers and –
don't do my man like that, Lovey.
Well, I mean, who else? I mean, the West, I don't follow it as much, but
Northwestern could be.
It could be Northwestern.
Yeah.
But I mean, just like that's like, I just can't imagine playing in that, like, because it's literally the toilet bowl. Like,
it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, and all those games on one day. I mean, it'll be fun. I mean,
got to head down to the North Wales studios here. You get the 2 TVs.
There you go. Yeah. But it'll be a nice close to the Big Ten season after everything that has gone on this year and say what you want about the Big Ten and how they handled the whole situation. But hopefully they get it right first and foremost for the players. That have aspirations of playing college football, going to the NFL. It's a good experience for them to, thank God they can play this year.
Well put. Well, this was an emergency podcast, so is there anything urgent that we didn't get out there yet?
I'm trying to think. I think we covered all the bases. Obviously, the next big news is going to be the schedule. Like I said, within a day or 2, we should have that. No fans this year at any games in the Big Ten.
Yep.
Penn State banned tailgating today, so don't get any ideas. And I guess that's one thing I'm really curious to see how it plays out because I love college football. Like to me, it's the top sport. And a big part of that is the pageantry. You have the bands, the student sections, the tailgating. It's the whole experience of it. And it's
generational connections.
Yeah, it is. And this year it's like, playing in an empty Beaver Stadium, like. On TV, watching it, look, we just watched the NFL this weekend without really any fans in the stadium with the exception of maybe the Chiefs.
And the Jags.
Okay, so there were a couple. And honestly, watching it on TV, the NFL, like watching the Eagles-Redskins game, I mean, the result was what it was, but it wasn't terrible watching it without fans.
They do a nice job of keeping the action on the
You
field.
almost feel like you're watching a football game, like when they go to play in like Ireland or something, where they put like the advertisements in the lower tier, kind of the to hide the empty. So they did a
It's
nice
like playing
job.
it on a sound stage.
Right.
Tyler.
And I don't know if they're going to do like inputted noises or anything like that, crowd noises, but I guess psychologically and emotionally for the players, I'm interested to see how, where the energy comes from, because it's not going to be coming from the crowd this year.
Yep. Should be fun. But Big Ten football is back. And that means Penn State football is back. And that means that you and I
We're
are back. We are excited to do it. Again, we mentioned it before, but we do have a new home this year. And that's going to be the Small Player Big Play app. You can download that on any of your mobile devices. Just go to the App Store. It's going to be completely free to watch our show. There are some pay options to watch some high school sports and things like that. They do a wonderful job all throughout the state of Pennsylvania. But again, this Penn State show, the Nittany Lion Sports Report, Tyler Gehlhaus, Bob Long, will remain free on the app, and that's going to be our new home. So we're excited to be there. Market ourselves to a much larger Penn State audience throughout Central PA as well. They have a really good following, and we're getting them into the Philadelphia market as well. So, Tyler, if there's nothing else,
that's it. It does feel good to be back. Bob kept texting me, "You want to do the show this year?" And I'm like, "If there's football, I'll do the show. No football, obviously, I'm not doing the show."
Tough to talk about much.
And today, when we could tell the news was going to break, I'm like, we just came to the agreement. Let's do an emergency podcast. I'll come up to the beautiful new house tonight in North Wales here, and we got to talk football. So it's great to talk football. Sense of normalcy is really the thing with how crazy this year's been. Just a sense of normalcy with the weather starting to turn a little cooler, the days shortening, but finally in a couple weeks here we'll have something to look forward to on the weekend for those 3.5 hours.
Can't wait. We'll be there for it. We'll probably have another one of these when the schedule comes out, and then October 24th cannot come quickly enough. You're the man, Tyler. Thanks for doing this, and thanks to all our loyal followers for coming back for another year of the Nittany Lion Sports Report. And, of course, it is live here on Bob Long Sports, soon to be in the Small Player Big Play app. Make sure you download that and be ready for all of our content this year. On go the Nittany Lions for another football season here in 2020.